All right, let me show you something really cool. In this scene, I have a dynamic bounding box. So you can see here as I try and go this way, I get stuck. If I try and go this way, there's a bounding box. And that's pretty cool. It gets a little cooler. This is what we're going to do. I change it just in my viewport here, and it updates the bounding box. Let's change this to a 16 to 19 or 16 to 10. It dynamically changes the bounding box. Okay, that's pretty cool, right? Well, this is orthographic. Orthographic is relatively easy. Let's change this to perspective. Now, the bounding box is also updated. Let's change the perspective up quite a bit. We can't get it out of the screen, sorry. So I gotta go in the center here, crank this up, and watch. The new bounding box is dynamically generated. So that's what we're gonna be talking about today. Extremely excited about this tutorial, but I don't want to talk too much. Let's just jump right in. So the first thing we need to understand is the different types of spaces within Unity. You have world space, which is your typical X, Y, Z position, okay? You then have screen position, which basically is pixels. So down here in the bottom left is 0, 0. Notice it's not three-dimensional, it's only two-dimensional. And then up here is the pixels, so the X pixels and the Y pixel value. And then you have, so we did screen, we did world space, then there's also viewport. Now viewport is interesting because it's 0, 0 here, the middle is 0.5, 0.5, and then the top right is 1, 1. So those are the different types of screen spaces that you can go in. And so when I was trying to do this, I was trying to find, how do I find the width and the height in world space of my game? Well, it's impossible, right? Unless it's a 2D game, it's impossible to find the width and the height because it's three dimensionals. Every Z or Z or whatever you call it, every Z coordinate has a new width and a new height. So the farther you get away from the camera, the bigger and the wider each of these screen spaces are. So that's pretty cool, right? If you want to find the width and the height, you also need to know what Z coordinate you care about. So we're going to go ahead and create a program to find this. Let's go ahead and jump into this new scene here. All right, so we're in this new scene, and the first thing you need to do is make sure that your main camera is centered at 0, 0. It doesn't matter the Z, and it doesn't matter the field of view. Like, you could do anything you want with that. It doesn't matter. And now what we're going to do is we're going to create a new program. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Scripts, Tutorial. There we go. Right click and create a boundary. Sure, boundary. And I'm going to go ahead and go here. All right, so we're in Visual Studios. The first thing we want to do is we want to get a reference to the camera. So we go camera. Let's just call this, I don't know, like cam. Sure. And then I don't like doing this in my start function. I like doing it in my awake function. Whenever I try and make a reference, I do it in awake. So I'm going to go cam equals camera.main. Now this allows me to have a reference to it so I don't have to keep on calling this function because it is slightly intensive, right? The next thing I want to do is I want to set a width and a height. So float width and then float height. I'm going to do this in a different function. I'm going to call this void find boundaries. Something like that. That's good enough. I'm going to say the following. I'm going to say width equals, and this is where all the fancy footwork comes in. Now, before I do this, let's talk. I'm going to offset a point to 1, 1, comma, whatever Z axis I want. So in this case, I want 0, but you could put anything you want. So whatever plane you want to put most of your objects in, you could do that as the Z. So I have 1, 1, meaning at 1 unit on my X and 1 unit on my Y. I then want to get the viewport X and Y and compare these two. That way I have basically 1 unit equals 0.069 viewpoint units or whatever. I'm going to be basically setting this to figure out how wide my screen is, because I can't just do screen.width because that's going to give me pixels. I could do this with pixels as well, so it works either way, but that's basically what I'm doing. So I'm going to go 1 divided by, and now I need to divide it by the offset in viewport space. So I'm going to say, okay, let's call this, what am I doing? Cam.world to viewpoint, world to viewport point. So this is going to take my world point and change it to viewport point. And like I said, we want to put in the point. So new vector 3, 1, 1, comma, whatever Z axis you want. So 1, 1, comma that. And then this is going to return back a vector 3, so I want to do dot x. So this is going to give me the x value. Now, it's probably going to give me something like 0.5682. And like I said, if the middle is 0.5 and this is 0.5682, that is an offset of 0.0682 or whatever I said. So what we want to do is we want to take this and we want to minus 0.5f like that. And that is going to give me the whole width of my screen. And that's it. That's pretty cool. Now, like I said, if you want a different z, you could change this to 1, 2, 3, whatever you want. We're going to do the same thing with height. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste this. Change that to height. Change this to y. And the same principle applies. So I've just found my width and I've just found my height. And that is pretty much it. Now we're going to create the bounding box. Before we do this, let's talk about the edge collider 2D. And basically, let's go ahead and go back into Unity. So now that we're back in Unity, let's grab this game object here and add an edge collider 2D. An edge collider 2D has several different points. If I edit these points, you can see I can move them around anywhere I want and it changes those. I can put more than 2, so I could like put 4. And this would be really useful if you were trying to make a very complex 2D terrain, like you could have like a mountain range or something like that. In this case, we're going to make a bounding box. Why not just use a box? Because a box has an inside and an outside, whereas this just has an edge. So anything coming from this direction is going to hit it, anything coming from this direction is going to hit it, and there's no inside. Now, why 5 points? Well, 5 points because it's going to be a rectangle. Rectangles have 4, but you have to get back to the point that you start at, and so 5. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to generate these positions based off the code. So the starting point might go up here in this corner, so that's going to be width plus height. Now the width is going to be divided by 2 because it's the width of the whole screen, and this is 0, 0, so it's going to be divided by 2. And the height divided by 2 will give me this. So that's going to be my first point. This one's going to be width, comma, negative height. This is going to be negative width, negative height. This is going to be negative width, positive height, and then just going to loop back on. So that's what we're going to do. Let's go ahead and go back to our, well, while we're here, might as well just throw boundary onto this game object. And we'll call this boundary manager. Boundary manager. There we go. Let's go ahead and jump into the boundary code again. And so what we want to do is we want to get a public edge collider 2D. Now, I don't need to make this public. I could just make this static or whatever, but I'm over it. So I'm just going to say edge equals get component edge collider 2D since it's within the same code, and we're good to go there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to set the points. In order to set the points are stored in a vector2 array. And so it's not going to be, you can't just change each value, you have to change the whole array. So we're going to do another function. We're going to go void, and what should we call this? Let's call this, I don't know, set bounds, something like that. I don't know. I'm always bad at naming things. I'm sure people look at my code and they're like, what are you trying to do here? Because the name's like jellyfish. I don't know. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a point. I'm going to call this vector2, not 3. I'm going to call it point A. Oh, that's very clever. I'm going to say new vector2, and I'm going to go width divided by 2, comma, not width divided by width. Width divided by 2, comma, height divided by 2. And that gives me my first point. That's going to be in the upper left corner. Now I'm just going to do point A, point B, point C, etc. Let's go ahead and do that now. Change that to B, C, and D. Now, like we said, if it's the upper corner is positive, positive, the next corner down here is going to be positive, negative. And then it's going to be negative, negative. And then it's going to be negative, positive like this, and then it'll just loop back around. So there we have our 4 points, and point A is going to be used twice, so we have 5 points. We're going to go ahead and create a temporary array. Let's go ahead and call this, I don't know, vector2. Temp array. Again, the naming, it's beautiful. This is going to equal a new vector2 array with the coordinates. Oh, no. New keyboard. Always have an excuse or something, right? Point A, point B, point C, point D, and then we're going to wrap back to point A. Get rid of that P on the vector there. Okay. So we have this temp array. And now what we're going to say is we're going to say edge.points equals temp array. And that should do it. Now, I need to make sure, always go back over my code before I do anything because I always mess up. So we got this, we're good. Here in the update function, we want to do find boundaries. And then we want to do set bounds. We want to do it in that order because it's going to use width and height. And if we haven't set those at the start, then it's going to give you a null error. And so I think we're good here. We might have to come back and change some things. Let's go ahead and compile that and go to Unity. All right, we're back in Unity. Now, one last thing. This ship has to collide with something that has a rigid body. So I'm going to add a component. Rigid body 2D is fine. New keyboard. I want to change this to kinematic yes. Okay. And then we have our boundary script. Do we have the edge colliders? We do. And there's 5 points. Okay, cross your fingers. Here we go. Yee. It's always scary. Oh, so far it looks good. Look at this. We got an edge that's looking great. Let's go ahead and look at those points. Ha 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 ha. And I'm going to move up. Oh, a little too small. Do you see how it's bonking right there? And coming down here, it's a little too high. Do you know why? Do you know why this is doing this? I do. I've seen this error before, which is great. Main camera, 0, 0, 0. That's good. Boundary manager, 0, 0, 0. Ha ha ha. Now watch. Bada bing, bada boom. It works. It works. We did it. This tutorial is almost over. And let's make sure. Let's change this from perspective to orthographic. Does it change the bounding box? It does. Let's change the size. It changes the bounding box. How cool is that? Hey, thank you so much for watching this tutorial. This is one I'm kind of proud of. So if you want to share this, bell, notifications, subscribe, thumbs up, comment below. Tell me what I probably did this way harder than I had to, right? Lots of good information, but I always do things difficultly. That's not a word, I don't think. I don't know. But yeah, please leave comments on all that stuff. Also, check out some of these other videos that you might like. And hey, thank you so much for your support, guys. You are the best. Have a great day. See you later. Bye.